Faith is the cornerstone of our spiritual journey, the unwavering trust that bridges the gap between our earthly struggles and divine promises. It is not merely a concept, but a living force, capable of transforming lives and empowering us to overcome the impossible. Jesus, in his profound wisdom, taught us that faith is not about perfection but about trust, a trust that sustains us in uncertainty, strengthens us in trials, and leads us to a deeper relationship with God. Faith is the foundation of our connection to the divine, the bridge that links the visible to the invisible, and the spark that ignites the soul to believe in the impossible. Jesus, in his infinite wisdom, spoke often about faith, not as something abstract, but as a living, breathing force that transforms lives. He said, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." Faith, then, is not measured by its size, but by its presence and persistence. It is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things unseen. Jesus showed us time and time again that faith is not about understanding every detail or seeing the entire plan unfold before us. It is about trusting God even in the unknown. Think of Peter stepping out of the boat onto the stormy sea at Jesus' command. Though the winds howled and the waves roared, Peter walked on water because his faith was fixed on Christ. And even when he faltered, Jesus reached out, reminding us that faith is not about never stumbling. It's about always trusting God to catch us when we do. Faith is what moves us forward when life feels uncertain. Jesus reminds us that faith is not merely about believing in miracles, but about believing in the miracle worker. It is the faith of the woman who touched the hem of his garment, believing that even this small act would heal her. And it did. Jesus turned to her and said, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." Her story tells us that faith doesn't wait for permission. It moves boldly, trusting that God's love and power are greater than our obstacles. Faith is what allowed blind Bartimaeus to cry out to Jesus for healing even when others told him to be quiet. Jesus not only heard his cry but said, "Your faith has made you well." Faith doesn't just ask. It declares, it believes, it receives. But faith is not just about asking for what we need. It is about surrendering to God's will, even when his answers don't align with our desires. Think of Jesus himself, kneeling in the Garden of Gethsemane, praying, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." Faith doesn't mean we won't face trials. It means we trust God's purpose in them. It is faith that sustained Jesus as he carried his cross to Calvary, knowing that through his suffering, salvation would come to the world. And it is faith that gives us the courage to carry our own crosses, trusting that God's strength will sustain us. Faith also requires action. Jesus taught us that faith is not passive. It compels us to step out, to reach beyond ourselves, and to believe in his promises even when the evidence seems contrary. When he multiplied the loaves and fishes, he first asked the disciples to bring what little they had. Faith calls us to offer what we have, trusting that God will do the rest. When he healed the paralyzed man lowered through the roof by his friends, Jesus first saw their faith. Faith is not just about believing for ourselves. It is about lifting others up, standing in the gap for those who cannot stand for themselves. Jesus' life is the ultimate example of faith in action. He trusted the Father completely, even to the point of death, showing us that faith is not about avoiding the valley but walking through it with confidence in God's presence. He invites us to that same kind of trust, saying, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Faith is the antidote to fear, the light that shines in darkness, and the anchor that holds us steady in the storm. It is the voice that says, "Be still and know that I am God," even when the world around us is anything but still. But perhaps the most beautiful thing Jesus teaches us about faith is that it is not something we must achieve on our own. He understands our doubts and meets us in our weakness. When Thomas doubted, Jesus didn't rebuke him. He invited him to touch his wounds and believe. When the father of the demon-possessed boy cried out, "I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief," Jesus responded with compassion, healing the boy and strengthening the father's faith. Faith is not about having all the answers. It's about bringing our questions to God and trusting Him to reveal the truth in His time. Today, Jesus calls us to live with that same bold, childlike faith, a faith that doesn't require certainty but embraces trust. He asks us to believe in Him not just for the miracles, but for the relationship. Faith is not a transaction. It is a transformation. It changes how we see ourselves, how we see others, and how we see the world. When we live by faith, we see the beauty in the broken, the hope in the hopeless, and the potential in the impossible. Faith opens our eyes to God's presence in every moment and reminds us that He is always working for our good. So, what is Jesus saying to us about faith today? He is saying, "Come. Trust me. Walk with me." He is reminding us that faith isn't about never being afraid. It's about choosing to trust Him even when we are. He is telling us that faith is the key that unlocks the door to God's promises, the shield that protects us from doubt, and the compass that guides us toward our purpose. He is inviting us to live lives of radical trust, to step out of the boat, to touch His garment, to cry out to Him, and to believe that with Him all things are possible. Faith is not just for the extraordinary moments, it is for the everyday. It is in the quiet prayer, the step forward when we can't see the path, the act of kindness when no one is watching, and the hope we hold on to when everything seems lost. Jesus says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me." This is the essence of faith. Trusting that the God who created the universe loves us deeply, sees us completely, and will never leave us. Let us walk in that faith, not because we know what the future holds, but because we know the one who holds it. Let us be bold in our belief, unwavering in our trust, and steadfast in our hope. For faith is not just a part of the journey, it is the journey. And as Jesus has promised, when we walk by faith, we will find that every step brings us closer to the abundant life He has prepared for us. So, have faith, live faith, and let your faith be the light that shines for others, pointing them to the hope and love of Christ.